Tyrannus removes his mask, and beneath it reveals himself to be Count Dooku. Dooku then tells Anakin that he notices that he didn't bring his lightsaber with him, and asks how he intends to fight him. Anakin then draws Tyrannus's lightsaber to his hand, and throws it into the lava flow, saying no lightsabers. Then they engage in a battle of force powers, and begin the fierce confrontation. The contest ends with Anakin raising Tyrannus off the ground. Palpatine, watching the entire confrontation, is delighted by the exhibition, and encourages Anakin, and he propels him out of a door, and over the lava, where his body bursts into flames and melts away before their eyes. Anakin feels satisfied, then seems to recover his senses, but Palpatine says, "You have done well, my apprentice." Anakin says that he cannot believe what he did, but Palpatine tells him he did the right thing, and asks him if he can feel the force flowing within him, and he answers he can. Palpatine says good, and laughs to himself. Anakin then walks across the room, and takes up the mask of Tyrannus, looking at it for a moment, as Palpatine tells him that they will go together to celebrate the victory of the Republic, and to oversee the passage of the new charter in the Galactic Senate. Meanwhile on Kashyyyk, Obi-Wan and Padme hear of the peace treaty, and are pleased, and then Obi-Wan continues fishing around through QB's memory. Padme glances over and questions if this is still necessary now that the war is over, but Obi-Wan says that they still don't know who sent those clone troopers to destroy General Grievous. And as they continue going through the files, QB uncovers some holo transmissions between Lord Tyrannus and another figure. He asks QB if he can display the actual holo file, and he tells him to present whatever he can. And when he watches the transmission, he looks and says with a smile of recognition, "But that's Senator Palpatine." He cannot believe it, and thinks this must be something else, a secret attempt at peace negotiations. But he asks QB if he can clean up the audio track, and hears Palpatine speaking of their invasion plans. Obi-Wan is startled, and glances over his shoulder, telling QB not to tell anything of this to Padme. Seeing the holo projection, Padme approaches, and asks if they'd found anything, but he says that he will need to align QB's holo system before he can check the files. But then asks Padme if he might borrow TT to give him a ride into town, and she asks if it's urgent, and Obi-Wan says there's some business he must take care of. He tells QB to wait in his room until he returns. He tells her that TT will look after her and take her to the hospital if she needs it, and that he'll be back as quick as he can. Anakin travels within Palpatine's personal transport, telling him that he expects now that the war is over that Palpatine will no longer be ruler of the Republic military forces, but Palpatine says he wouldn't say that, since the peace charter permits the election of a figure to oversee the operations of the Empire, someone who can act more directly and not be hindered by specific planetary opposition, who would be able to quell uprisings and rebellions and act decisively in defense of the new Empire. And says that if he is elected to this office he would very much wish to see that Anakin would stand by his side. Palpatine goes into the Senate room with his Trade Federation allies around him, and taking his place at the table, proclaims that he has worked out the surrender deal with Lord Tyrannus, in which all separatist planets and their territories would be reintegrated into the Republic, and the Imperial Charter, calling for the formation of a permanent army and military authority, including the establishment of a new elected office that would be able to act swiftly and decisively to deal with any threat to the new empire, along with an expansion of their fleet so as to prevent any future invasions into their space, and to prevent the arising of another separatists movement. Palpatine is cheered, although afterwards some express views that there is no necessity to some of his measures, including the formation of a emperor, which they figure will not pass the Senate in any case. While at home, TT alerts Padme that the terms of the treaty have come in, and Padme now must go to cast her vote for ratification, but tells TT that she means to go there in person. TT asks and wonders about it, and she says that QB will remain in the house. Padme says the vote will happen soon, and they need to leave at once. TT pilots her personal transport, while Padme reads the terms of the treaty, but as she reads it she says it has very complicated provisions given the rather simple terms, a lot of things hidden within its wording beyond its general scope, saying that the Emperor can gain direct control over any planet's defense, including all resource and mineral rights, if ratified by the military council. Reading that it can be overthrown by a formal protest filed by the ruling body on any planet, and be handled through a council of arbitration. Padme is surprised to find this charter is less like a surrender agreement, and more like an entirely new constitution. Arguments are made on both sides, but they are surprisingly brief. General Tarkin rises in support of the military council, on the view that the new empire needs to have time for wounds to heal, and to deal with the problem of organizing the new government. General Tarkin praises Palpatine for bringing the Republic together again, and expanding it, and establishing a stronger military presence to prevent another rift by the Separatists. Given the Federation incursions, this seems to be entirely justified to many. The Senate quickly ratifies the peace treaty, which incorporates back into the Republic the former Separatists and their territories. Very few believe that the ancillary provisions contained in the Imperial Charter will pass so easily. Voting continues on the Imperial Charter through the full Galactic Senate, though when the election tallies are counted it turns out that they have all passed, including affirming the election of Palpatine to the office of Supreme Head of the new Empire. As she watches the tally, Padme is shocked, wondering how this could have happened. Palpatine is then formally declared Emperor, and they leave the Senate room, with most of them congratulating him, although Padme's are rather muted. Bail Organa checks the results of the tally, saying that very few of the founding planets approved of the Empire, conveying to Padme that the establishment of the Empire incorporated not only the former states, but that the Charter included all of their territories. Padme concurs with this. And then Bail tells her that because of the provisions of the alliance between the Federation and the Separatists, the Federation Empire became a territory of the Separatists. Padme says that with Federation space incorporated into the Republic, it likewise gave their representatives equal voting power in the full Senate. They wonder if this was just an oversight, or whether it was done on purpose. They meet with some of the high-ranking senators, who argue that although the Federation was defeated that they now had a great deal to do with the election of Palpatine, saying that the Republic defeated them, but then they made Palpatine Emperor. Others argue that the Federation ought not be punished merely because of their defeat. While Tarkin says that Palpatine is just the sort of man they would wish to have in such a position, and says to Padme that coming from her own planet, that she must be glad of his election. So they say that Palpatine is now Emperor of this new empire, and that the Senate must share power with the new military council put in place to prevent future disruptions within the new empire. And it is soon announced that this council will be headed up by General Tarkin, appointed to it by the new emperor. The senators there seem to grow increasingly uneasy, and Padme then sees Anakin, and runs to him, and after greeting her tells her that she ought to be home. But Padme says she needed to be here for the vote, and tells him that she voted against the creation of the Empire, and is not at all pleased when she learns that one of the first planets the Emperor approves the mining of is Naboo, which he hands over to the very same managers of the Federation, who possessed it before. Padme wishes to stand against this, but Anakin defends the Emperor, saying he knows what he is doing, and does it for the good of the Empire. Palpatine then requests that Anakin might go with him on a mission for the new Empire, and he goes with him, saying goodbye to Padme, and reminding her to get back home, before walking off with Palpatine. Bail and Padme go together to commiserate, and she expresses to him that she is powerless now to protect her planet. He assures her that there are still provisions available to the local ruler to oppose specific activities of the Empire, but she says she is no longer Queen of Naboo, and such a process will take months. She knows what destruction the Federation machinery can do in mere weeks, for even now there are places on her planet still not recovered from their last invasion of it. Palpatine and Anakin return together to Mustafar, and there in his command room he inducts Anakin into the Sith, conferring to him his new Sith name, Lord Darth Vader. He also conveys to him a new, red lightsaber, telling him that with this weapon, that he will defend the Empire against all threats and enemies, and Vader concurs that he will serve the Empire and Emperor, and bows to him. Palpatine mentions the destruction of the fortress on Thuluk, and Vader tells Palpatine that they acquired classified files from General Grievous. The Emperor asks where the information resides, and he answers within one of the Jedi Council's tech droids, being kept at his house. Palpatine tells Vader that the information contained within this Jedi droid creates a security risk for the new Empire, and that Anakin must go and destroy it. Vader answers yes, my master, bows, and goes off. He then gets aboard his fighter and launches, piloting it back to his home on Korzuak. At the Skywalker home, Padme is back when Anakin arrives. Padme greets him, but he brushes her away, looking around for the droid. She at once notices his eyes, their fearsomeness. And he tells her he has not been sleeping well recently, and he's had a lot on his mind, and babbles a bit, still looking around the house. Anakin asks if Obi-Wan is there, and she tells him that he had to leave to get something for his droid. Then Anakin asks where is QB, and Padme tells him in Obi-Wan's room. Anakin charges in while Padme asks him what this is all about. Anakin opens the door and their QB turns to look at him. He approaches him, and then takes out his lightsaber, activating it, and bringing it down. Padme screams as the lightsaber slices right through the middle of the droid. Smoke pours out as Padme runs up to QB, asking Anakin why he did that. Anakin only says that it had to be done. He puts his lightsaber away, and she tells Anakin that Obi-Wan was searching through the data files on his droid, and he seemed to be so fond of it. Now what is he going to say to him when he comes back? And he repeats with some uncertainty that it had to be done. He looks around the room and seems to withdraw from it. He looks out of the window at the sun, and attempts to clear his eyes. Then he clenches his fist and closes the shade from the glare, and then throws a plant out of the window, and knocks down other things, before storming out of the room. Padme runs after him, and Anakin tells her that she must not tell Obi-Wan that he did this. Padme then begins to cry at Anakin, that of course she has to tell him what he's done. She then asks him to stay there, but he says he has to leave. She is now weeping, and grabbing at his arms, pleading with him, screaming that Obi-Wan is his friend, asking him why he has turned against him, telling him that she will contact the Jedi Council. He looks at her with fever in his eyes, and reaches out his hand. She is immediately gripped by a feint and falls lifeless to the floor.